in the newsroom. The last time he visited Berlin, it was 5 years ago. Barack Obama, at the time on the campaign trail, promising a new partnership for a multilateral world. This Wednesday, he was back as U.S. President, Commander-in-Chief. After all, it was the 50th anniversary of the Ich bin ein Berliner speech, where John F. Kennedy promised to guarantee Europe's safety at the height of the Cold War. Well, nearly a quarter century after the fall of the Berlin Wall, U.S. might still matters to Europe, thus the location ripe for Obama to offer Russia a further one-third reduction in nuclear weapons, also ripe for the U.S. to justify its cyber-snooping policy that so angered Germans the last few days. We'll get German reactions to the speech, to the visit, and look at the chemistry with Obama's hostess, who, as a result of the euro crisis, finds herself acting, as The Economist puts it, as Europe's reluctant hegemon. Above all, we're going to see how Obama remains very popular in Europe, but not necessarily his policies. Today in the France 24 debate, Obama and Berlin, have relations hit something of a wall? And with us to talk about it from Berlin, Jörg Wolf, editor-in-chief of the Atlantic Review, who was witness to that speech. Thank you for being with us. Thanks as well to Tyson Barker of the Bertelsmann Foundation. He is in the United States, but just back from Germany. Hope the jet lag isn't kicking in for our discussion. And here with us in the studio, political scientist Anne Dessine, who teaches at the University of Paris at Nanterre. Welcome back to the debate.
Hello.
And welcome to Martin Untersingen, who's journalist at Le Monde.fr and author of Anonymity on the Internet, which is published in French for the time being.
Good evening. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us. The France 24 debate, where you can always join the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter, our hashtag F24debate. Before we go into the specifics of what was said, Jörg Wolf, I've got to ask you, we saw the images at the top there of 5 years ago, big crowd. This time around, it was invitation only, it seems, to that area where you could watch the speech. And then there was that big plexiglass there in front of Obama when he was speaking. Times have changed. All right, we seem to have an issue with the sound with Berlin, but we hope to have that fixed right away. Tyson Barker, you watched the speech. Your thoughts on the backdrop and the pomp and circumstance that surrounded it?
It's definitely a different Berlin, and it's a different Obama. Obama has been weighed down by 5 years of governing. You know, when he first spoke to Berlin, he was a candidate on which people could project their aspirations. So whatever you wanted to see about a post-Bush America, that's what you saw in Obama, and it brought 150,000 Berliners to the streets. Today, we know Obama as a president, Obama as a politician in practice, and that means that there have been certain compromises and certain divergences in policies that don't exactly sit well with Germans.
All right. Before we get into the what doesn't sit well with Germans, and we'll delve into it in detail, let's talk about what Obama offered today to his Russian counterpart, the U.S. president, using that Brandenburg Gate backdrop to offer Moscow a one-third reduction in nuclear weapons.
We may no longer live in fear of global annihilation, but so long as nuclear weapons exist, we are not truly safe. We may strike blows against terrorist networks, but if we ignore the instability and intolerance that fuels extremism, our own freedom will eventually be endangered.
Jörg Wolf, I believe we do have the sound issues cleared up. Can you hear me okay? Oh, we're still not hearing you. Oh, dear. Well, hopefully it'll be 3 times lucky as far as that goes. And Dessine, there's been an initial reaction to those words from Barack Obama, from an aide to Vladimir Putin, who says, how can we take the idea of strategic nuclear weapons reduction seriously when the United States is building up its ability to intercept these strategic nuclear weapons? These things clearly do not go together. That weapons defense shield not sitting well with the Russians. Now, that may be a bargaining position, but there's some tough talk out of Vladimir Putin's camp in reaction to that offer.
Yeah, I think there are two things. If we look at the cover of the magazines 5 years ago, he was superstar. Now he's lost friend. And in fact, there's a big picture of Kennedy and Obama is only in the rest of the picture. And also, probably we can think that he was meeting with the new Chinese leader, Xi, last week. And he also, the Chinese leader, was in a good position to blame Obama for PRISM and everything. So that when he's negotiating both with the Chinese and the Russians, it's easy for the former enemies during the Cold War to say that Obama, who had promised to change and go back to the values of America, has finally not kept his words, whether for PRISM, the drones, and all the things that the Germans and many Europeans don't like, but also because in Europe we're very idealistic. We thought that not me, but many people thought that the election of Obama would signal a new world and everything would change, Guantanamo would be closed, etc. So it's welcome back to reality.
Welcome back to reality. Would you say he's in a position of weakness when it comes to the Russians?
Weakness is not in the position he was when he was given the Nobel Prize, because he has not accomplished what many thought he would accomplish. And he is in the middle of a number of scandals. This is not the Watergate, but when we add up PRISM, the Associated Press, the IRS, this and that, it's a lot. Again, it's not Watergate. It's just small or minor violations. We should never want violations, but we are talking about minor violations. But it's a big series of them. And I think he's maybe not wicked, but he's not in the best position to negotiate at the international level.
Now, Obama arrived in Berlin coming from Northern Ireland, a G8 summit that concluded Tuesday. He got some FaceTime there with Vladimir Putin. Now, with Russia alone in backing Syria's Assad, one reporter asked if it was Putin who felt isolated.
No, not at all. It looks as if someone wanted it to be presented this way. I take full responsibility. My colleagues will reiterate that. We had a very good discussion. There were disagreements, that is true, on several issues, but I never felt lonely, and Russia was never on its own when making statements on Syria.
Tyson Barker, Vladimir Putin, when he says he didn't feel lonely at that G8 meeting, so who was the one who's caught flat-footed right now when it comes to these issues?
Well, the G8 obviously is a consensus-based organization, and what the Cameron government tried to do, of course, was to build a consensus, and it seemed to do so in the communique by stating that all sides are looking for a peaceful solution, that no side should support al-Qaeda and its affiliates, that chemical weapons should be used by nobody. These are things that the Russians actually signed up to in this agreement, and that's at least shows some consensus-building process starting to exist. Now, the Obama administration, with its new national security team in place, is starting to pull the West towards more engagement in this conflict on the side of the rebels through the movement of arms into Syria and the beginning of discussion of a no-fly zone. This is a discussion that the Europeans are really going to have to start to have under themselves, and that's going to be an important swing element in between the United States and Russia in regard to the Syria conflict.
All right, so you're seeing the momentum perhaps at this point swinging a little bit towards the West's side. Got to tell everybody there's been a big thunderstorm this Wednesday in Paris, hence the late arrival of Anton Kozlov, stuck in traffic. How are you, sir?
Thank you. I'm
Anton
fine.
Kozlov of the American Graduate School. Anton, your thoughts. Coming out of that GA summit, we heard there's been an off-the-cuff sort of dismissal of Barack Obama's initial proposal there in Berlin to reduce the nuclear arsenal between the U.S. and Russia by 1/3. Would you say that the one who's got more steam in his engine right now is Vladimir Putin or Barack Obama?
Well, I think, well, first of all, I heard and I read today after the initial proposal something quite different. In fact, the Russians said that they are interested and they would like to include more actors into this process. So I don't know where this idea of dismissal. I mean, maybe
not dismissal as such, but it was one of the aides of Vladimir Putin saying, as long as you've got this defense missile shield thing going, we're not taking it seriously.
Right. Well, that's something that's been going on for quite a while now. So I think this is, of course, the Russians will bargain hard because they've been concerned about the defense shield for some time. But I think that the results of this meeting were probably more positive for Putin than for, well, Obama. I wouldn't say they were negative, but I think for Putin, precisely because on the Syrian issue, because it looks like the West is now is more inclined to accept the Russian position. And I think all this talk about arming the rebels and demanding the departure of Assad, I mean, arming the rebels, I personally think it's probably a lot of media bluff on the part of the United States. And regarding this Assad departure, clearly the statement read that both Assad and the opposition should try to do everything to not to allow the Al-Qaeda linked organizations to operate in Syria. So,
all right, we have a question on Twitter, and I hope that we now have Jörg Wolf. Jörg, can you hear us?
I can hear you very well.
Ah, perfect. The wonders of modern technology. We have on Twitter Marion, who says the Obama speech promises the U.S. will reduce U.S. nuclear weapon security by 25%. Will reduce 25% of U.S. nuclear weapons, security guaranteed by the remaining 75%. Is this really leading to peace? Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's certainly a start. I mean, Obama is supporting this dream of a nuclear-free world, and you have to start somewhere. So it's a start, and it was great that he made this promise today here in Berlin. Germans are very much in support of a nuclear-free world. Guido Westerwelle, our foreign minister, he even wants to get rid of all American nuclear weapons which are stationed in Germany. It's even part of the coalition treaty of the current government, something that you might find surprising, since this is center-right a coalition and not a red-green. So it's certainly great that he made this statement, but we have to see what will really happen. It's certainly a very long way with these negotiations with the Russians, and then with the wider goal of reducing the threat of nuclear weapons at all.
That's fascinating, because it's been nearly a quarter century since the end of the Cold War, and obviously missiles in Europe were at the height of tension for Germany in the years leading up to the fall of the Berlin Wall, and yet a quarter century on, it's still a big issue where you are.
Yes, it is. And Germans are not big fans of missile defense as well. So I think the issue in Germany is rather that we don't see much security threats. We see a few security threats, but we as a nation don't really see military solutions to the security threats that there are. So we are quite complacent. We are quite inward-looking. And these were also two statements in Obama's speech that should really be remembered by the German public. And I hope the media is picking it up tomorrow. Obama has warned against complacency. He has warned that people are inward-looking, especially. I mean, he didn't specifically point out Germany, but it was certainly addressed towards Germany. So Germans think, okay, the Cold War is over, we are living at peace, we don't need to invest in defense. I mean, Germany has consistently spent less than 2% of GDP on defense, despite its pretty good economic standing right now. So it's a long-standing demand from NATO, from the Americans, that Germany shares more of the burden, and that starts by investing in capabilities, which we might not need today, we don't need tomorrow, but we need them in 20 years, because who knows how the security situation will be back then. So we have to be prepared rather than being complacent. So this was an important point in Obama's speech, and I hope it's not going to be missed.
All right, you hope it's not going to be missed. Obama, who arrived in Berlin knowing it was never going to be hostile territory. Germans still love him as much as they seem to dislike his predecessor, if you believe this Pew Research poll. but it's a tricky exercise speaking at the Brandenburg Gate. After all, there are precedents.
Ich bin ein Berliner.
Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate.
Alles ist möglich. Berlin ist frei.
Now, we didn't hear too much German spoken, Jörg Wolf. There was a furtive thank you at the end of the speech, but I noticed that in the press this morning, people were giving advice to Obama. Don't try to be too many references to Kennedy's speech. How did he do on that score, in your view?
I think the speech was good, but it wasn't a great speech. And I agree. It's impossible to compare, or it's not fair to compare Obama's speech with Kennedy or with Ronald Reagan, because the situation was totally different. But having said that, I do believe Obama could have done better. He was talking very much about the past. Not that he didn't say that much concrete, forward-looking. He could have spoken more about the possibilities of the transatlantic trade and investment partnership, how it will increase the bonds between Europe and the United States. And that is not just about economics, but it's also about our values, about our role in the world. That if we get this treaty, if this partnership really going, and it will be tough negotiation, but if we get this going, it will make a huge difference because then our norms, our quality standards will have to be adopted by other countries in the world. And Obama didn't say much about this at all.
And are Germany and Europe as a whole going to be closer or further away to the U.S. Than at the beginning of Barack Obama's mandate? We'll pick up on that point when we come back. This is the France 24 debate.